Everyone knows that a zombie is dead, but yet somehow has a way to keep moving, right? In today's episode of The Life of Money, we're going to explore a coin that should have died almost 250 years ago, but somehow it just keeps living. Today's coin is a 1780 Maria Theresa Thaler. Now, this is a large coin. It's slightly heavier than an old United States silver dollar, so pretty good sized chunk of coin here. The empress depicted on here is Maria Theresa, and she died in 1780, the empress of the Habsburg Empire. The Holy Roman Empire, which gave this coin legitimacy, died in 1806. The Habsburg Empire or Habsburg dynasty, perhaps, that has been its issuing authority, has been dead since 1918. And yet this coin continues to be minted to this day, dated 1780. So, what world gave this life? Well, in 1780, you can see in Europe here this collection here you can see in this 1806 map. This is 1806 Guthrie's Atlas. 1806 is the same year that Napoleon is going to come in and blow everything up. But you can see on this map that it is labeled Germany from the best authorities. But the fact is, there was no Germany at this time. There was a loose collection of German speaking people, but no Germany per se. Okay. But you can see here that Maria Theresa was ruling Austria, Hungary, Bohemia, Croatia from 1740 to 1780. Maria Theresa, she was reforming taxation, she was reorganizing the military, she was modernizing education, and yet her most memorable finding is the existence of this coin. This coin was struck starting in 1741, had some standards that slightly modified over the years. By the time she died in 1780, this coin was a trade coin. It wasn't necessarily meant to be used in daily transactions, it's for trade. Okay. And we find that though it was minted in this German speaking Holy Roman Empire Habsburg era, it lived in a whole different part of the world. This coin lived in Eastern Africa, the Middle East, Western India. It is in the markets of Aden, the markets of Ethiopia, that you are going to find these things being widely accepted, all the way down to Zanzibar, okay? We find the last documented widespread use of these was in East Africa in the 1970s, but multiple reports are stating that these are still being used today in certain conflict zones as the go-to money. So let's break it down a little bit. On this coin, we can see on the obverse side, it starts out simple enough. M. Teresa de Gracia. Okay, so this is Maria Theresa, and she is ruling by the grace of God. Okay, so we got to make sure that everybody knows that's true. Then she's going to start to talk some smack. All right, some massive smack. She's going to start up with RM. Sounds pretty innocent to me. She says, Romanorum Imperatrix. She's saying, I am the imperial power of the Romans, or more specifically, of the Holy Roman Empire. And this little trash talk is not true. All right. When her father died in 1740, she should have become the Empress of the Holy Roman Empire. That was part of the Habsburg lands and territories that she inherits. But there is no mechanism in place for a female ruler of the Holy Roman Empire. So instead, her husband, Francis I, rules as the emperor from 1740 until his death in 1765. And it's a wink and a nod because everybody in the know knows that it's, in fact, Maria Theresa who's calling the shots. It's her husband sitting on the throne. When her husband dies in 1765, her son takes over the same role, Francis II, and again, she's in charge. And right here on this coin, she's talking it right out. I don't care what the rules say. I don't want the I am in charge. Okay, that's me. She goes on to say, Hungary, Bohemia, Regina. She's saying, I am the Queen of Hungary. I am the Queen of Bohemia. Okay. Now that's a lot of trash talk, right? And it keeps going. You go to the back. Now, I admit, on the reverse side of this coin, I did in fact take a much nicer specimen than mine because I would like to talk some details that are in fact worn quite smooth on my copy. So it starts off on the side, Archduchess of Austria. So that's the first two words there, Archdoster. And first off, the whole concept of archduchess is sort of an invention by the Habsburgs. It's to make sure that the world sees that Austria is more important. Because at this point, as I sort of showed you on that map of Germany, that there is so many differing places. There's bishoprics and there's marquisates and there's duchies and there's just all kinds of stuff. And she wants to make sure that everybody recognizes that Austria is somehow more important. Okay, so now moving over to the other side of the coin, we start with the DUX over there, and then we move into the Berg. So she's saying she's the Duchess of Burgundy, right? Then Burgundy would be what they would call the lowlands, or what we might know of as modern Belgium and the Netherlands, possibly Luxembourg, this part of the world. She goes on and she says she's the Countess of Tyrol. Tyrol is a territory that's very important for trade. It's relatively small, but it's in the Alpine area um, between Germany and Italy. And then finally, that last X on there is really for the traders themselves, because it's telling them before 1753, this coin was a little bit heavier, and then in 1753, it got a little lighter. And so the X is simply telling the trader, was this before or after that change, all right, so that they can adjust the scales accordingly. And then finally, along the third edge of the coin, which is, or the third side of the coin, right? The edge is the queen's personal motto. The queen, the empress, the archduchess, I don't know which crown she's wearing, but it reads justice and clemency. Okay, so that's a good thought. I like that kind of a thought to put on there, a personal touch. So let's look to the center here and look at the heraldry that we have here. This center coat of arms is not a coat of arms, it's five different coats of arms stuck together. You find Hungary in the top left, you find Burgundy on the bottom left, you find Bohemia on the top right, and now we see a newcomer. We see Burgau there on the bottom right, and Burgau is a smaller territory on the kind of far west of the Habsburg lands, but we'll find that the largest city in Burgau is going to be Günzburg, which is going to be the mint at which this was predominantly made when it was first created. And now, once you get past that coat of arms in the center, what do you find? You find that all of a sudden there's this giant crown over the top. That giant crown is a representation of the Holy Roman Empire, which gives the royal authority, which then governs all the smaller entities. Okay? So, quite a powerful thing. And what's interesting is that it has all this symbolism, and yet the Arab and African traders that are using this, they don't care about the symbolism. They just care that it's real, okay? They just care that it's real. And what's fascinating is that the Austrians, at some point in the 1850s, they tried to modernize the coin a little bit, update it a little bit, and those traders just said, no, I won't touch it. I won't touch it unless it says 1780 and has Maria Theresa's head on it, and you cannot change a thing. So who made it? Well, the first mint was the Günzburg mint, as we mentioned in Burgau, but it started to pick up in popularity to the point where, at the time of Maria Theresa's death, there was just more demand than the mint that Günzburg could supply, so Vienna started to pick it up. But lo and behold, this coin was made throughout the Habsburg lands at Günzburg, Vienna, Hull, Carlsberg, Kremnitz, Prague, Milan, Venice. It just, they had to make more, just had to make more. And this thing was so well accepted, it was making the Habsburgs the dominant trade empire. So along come some of the Europeans and go, I want a piece of the pie. So the British start moving into East Africa. In particular, we'll describe Tanganyika in a little while. But they're moving into the East Africa region, and they're finding they won't take any money except this one. We need these. So they started to mint them. And then the Italians found some of the same stuff. They tried to impose a currency in Eritrea, what they called the Talero, and it was designed to be exactly the same size and the same. And the people said, "I ain't touching it. Okay, I won't use it." And then the Italians really had to go all in come 1935 when they invade Ethiopia, because now they've got this major territory to control and no currency. They won't touch a lira over there. All right. So what did the Italians do? They set up a mint in Rome. The French were minting these. The Belgians were minting. It went on and on and on. Okay. But perhaps the most interesting story actually comes from World War II, where the American Office of Strategic Services is rumored to have counterfeited these things to flood the market. In fact, in an article in Popular Science in 1962, the OSS R&D director, Stanley Lovell, reports they were minting these to flood the Indonesian economy. The Indonesian economy, Indonesia at the time, Dutch East Indies, was occupied by Japan, and Japan was imposing a currency on the Indonesians that the Indonesians did not like. And so the OSS starts forging these, starts faking them, and starts dumping, trying to kill the Japanese currency there. Okay. And his quote, the money for which the Indonesians would do anything. Okay? Now, this is a cool story, but the more I dig, the more I think it might be an old wise tale or something, because Indonesia had never been part of the world that had been circulating this coin. There's no reason to believe the people in Indonesia had any idea that this thing existed. And then in the article, Lovell even says, "Oh yeah, they were the size of a U.S. quarter." Buddy, no, that's not true. Okay, so I'm not sure how much of the story is true, but if it is true, I mean, it's such a cool idea. A dead empress is more trusted than a living government. Okay, so now what is this coin to a human being? Okay, it turns out that we're going to look at Amsterdam, a major trading city in the Habsburg Empire. And a unskilled laborer in 1780 earned 0.96 gulden. Now, if you do the translations on that, that means a worker, unskilled labor, would take 2.5 days to earn one Maria Theresa Thaler. If that worker had this one tailor in his hands, he could buy 67 pounds of rye. What do you do with rye? Well, you make rye bread because that is the staple food in Amsterdam. And what do you find? You could make bread for 48 days for one person or 12 days for a family of four. So it's got some purchasing power. Okay. Flash forward to Eastern Africa and the British territorialization here. In 1921, the British just started minting some coins for East Africa, started to really pick up in Tanganyika here, specifically. Tanganyika is modern Tanzania and Kenya? No, Kenya. Can't remember. Tanganyika. But anyway, what they found was that the unskilled urban worker in 1921 was earning almost a shilling, okay, close to a shilling, 11.31 pence a day. And it would take that worker 8.8 days to earn one Maria Theresa Taylor. But if you had it, you could buy 105 pounds of maize. Maize is essentially corn, and it is the ingredient needed to create what they call ugali, which was the staple food. It was every meal, every person, every time. And it's kind of a porridge. My best image is polenta, but somebody's going to tell me I'm full of baloney. It ain't no polenta. So whatever it is, it's the staple food that people were using. And you can see here that with one Maria Theresa Taylor, you could feed yourself for 13.4 weeks or 23 and a half days for a family of four. Come 1931, however, the world economy was in a tailspin from the Great Depression. And what you find is that your daily wages were close to chopped in half. And therefore, it took 16 days, almost twice as long, just to earn one Maria Theresa Taylor. But the good news is the price of maize and the price of almost all commodities had just collapsed. And so all of a sudden you could buy 291 pounds. So though your wages had decreased sharply, your purchasing power had in fact gone up quite a bit. Okay. Now, flash forward to 1943, and these poor workers were getting paid even less than they were in 1931. And the price of maize and all commodities was absolutely crazy high because of the wartime demands. And so all of a sudden, it would take you 19 days to earn one Maria Theresa Taylor, and now you could use this to buy just 49 pounds of maize. And you can see when you break it down here that that means it took 19.2 days to earn it, and it buys you enough basic commodity to feed your family for 10.2 days. You better have a multiple income earning family at that rate. Okay? That can't hold for long. So, what life does this hold in more of a modern sense? Now, I got my first copy, not this one, my first copy of a Maria Theresa Taylor in 1983 for free. It was a deal. Subscribe to Coinage Magazine for 1 year. We'll send you Maria Theresa Taylor. Now, that was a really cool coin, okay? But I went off to college, and you know how it goes, and your buddies are like, let's go out drinking, and I ain't got no money, but I got this. Let me go and, yeah, I'm sure it went away that way. Okay. I was looking up on eBay and the buy it now prices, and the cheapest buy it now price I could find was $48, right? And most of the items that are there are in mint condition, like perfect mint condition. Okay? And I personally got this one for $36.26 a few weeks ago on eBay through an eBay auction. What did I find? Nobody wanted this bad boy. This bad boy was, oh man, no, everybody is bidding on the proofs and the MS and the perfects and the perfects. So it's an ironic thing that the coin with life is the coin nobody else wants. Okay? If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit like and subscribe.